What do you do when you're in the interview process of interviewing somebody for a job and you have two candidates that are basically equal? They have equal experience. You like them both, but you can only hire one. What are the characteristics that you're going to look for to make a decision on who to hire? How do you know which one you should hire? Well, I'll tell you a story about a recent situation that I was in, where I was in this exact situation. We had to hire somebody in our accounting office, but we only had room for one, and we had two really equal candidates. We liked both of them. They had both been through multiple interviews. We did group interviews, and the group was torn on who to hire. And I read a book years ago that really helped bring clarity on how to make better hires, how to make the right hires, and what to look for in this exact situation. And years ago, I had to hire somebody in our operations department. And a friend of mine, who was actually a flight instructor of mine back in college, they had called me up and they asked if I could do a favor, if I could interview their nephew, who was still in college. He was a senior in college, but she wanted him to get experience interviewing. And I just happened to be in the interview process of hiring for the company that I work at. And I also had just come across this book, which I'll talk about at the end, that talked about these three character qualities when hiring: humble, hungry, and smart. And this book gave very practical questions to ask to identify how to find out who's more humble, hungry, and smart, which are basically core values. Those are behavior traits. And the whole premise of when you're in a situation and you have two equal candidates, what you want to do is you want to make the hiring decision based on who you think is the best culture fit for your company. And if you haven't taken the time to identify your core values, this should be step one. But even if you haven't, if you read this book and you make a hiring decision based on humble, hungry, smart, you're going to make a much better hiring decision than just trying to do it by your gut or how you feel. But anyways, my friend's nephew went through the interview process, and lo and behold, he actually had, even though he didn't have the experience that the other candidate did, he actually had the better answers that aligned with our core values. And I went from just interviewing him for just his benefit of getting experience in the interview process. I ended up hiring him. And I didn't hire him because his aunt was my flight instructor back in college. I literally hired him because he exuded the core values of our company. And it was eye-opening because the person that he was up against had way more experience, was out of college, had a better resume, but his answers, that person's answers revealed that he didn't have the core values that our company had. So I ended up hiring my friend's nephew, and he ended up being with us for 6 or 7 years and became a supervisor and was really a good hire. And recently, I'm in the same situation again, but this time, both of these candidates that we had to hire, they were referrals from other employees at our company, which, if you have employees that are referring their family and friends to work for you, that's a really good sign. And that's what was going on here. Two candidates, very equal in experience, very equal in the interview process and everything, but I could only make one hire. And it came down to core values. I made the decision, our group made the decision on who to hire based on who we thought had the characteristics that were in alignment with our core values. And the book that taught me this and is very practical, that I highly recommend you look into, the name of the book is called The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. And in that book, it talks about hiring for core values, and how you hire for core values comes down to the questions that you're asking in the interview process. And there's 3 specific characteristics in the Ideal Team Player book, which are hungry, humble, and smart. So even if you haven't taken the time to identify what your specific core values are at your company, and core values, what that is, those are just a set of behavior traits where if you hire based on these behavior traits, you're gonna have a much higher chance of hiring the right person that's gonna fit within your company. And core values, if you can narrow down core values to just a set of 4 to 7 words that describe the uniqueness of your culture at your company, you're gonna be able to identify and make hiring easier and quicker for the right people. You're gonna spend less time interviewing the wrong people, and you're gonna spend less time in the hiring process, because once you identify somebody's a culture fit, that's the indicator that they're the right hire. And that's what we did with this last interview. We looked at the core values of our company, and we made the decision based on that. But real quick, the book Ideal Team Player talks about humble, hungry, and smart. And if you haven't gone through a core values exercise at your company, there's a link in the description of this video that you can actually follow and find out and identify what your core values are at your company. What are the core unique characteristics that make your company unique? There's a free download. You can do this exercise with your team and come up with those words that identify the right characteristics for hiring decisions. And once you identify what those characteristics are, you're gonna hire better. You're gonna be able to identify who needs to be let go, who needs to be recognized, who needs to be rewarded. It's one of the foundational elements of being a top workplace. And where I work, we've been a top workplace for 9 consecutive years. And it really started out with the Ideal Team Player book, and identifying, asking the right questions. In the Ideal Team Player, the 3 characteristics are, you don't have to do the core values exercise. You can just use these 3 core values right here: humble, hungry, smart. Hungry meaning you want somebody that has a work ethic, somebody that wants to work. You don't want to hire a slacker. You don't want to hire somebody that's lazy. But the questions in this book will identify who's hungry, who wants to work. The second question is, the second trait is humble. Humble is somebody that's teachable, somebody that has humility. And if you ask in the interview, are you a humble person? Are you teachable? The candidates, they're all gonna say, yeah. But you wanna ask questions that don't come right out and say that. And the book has a bunch of questions in it that allow you to identify if they really are teachable, if they really are humble. Because the trait of humility and being teachable is so important, because when they get into situations at work, you want someone that is not gonna lie. Like if they make a mistake, you don't want someone to cover it up. You want someone to be humble enough to, accept that they did something wrong, and you also want someone to be able to take constructive criticism, to be able to learn from their mistakes, because we all make mistakes. It's just part of life. But learning from them, a lot of people, they don't want to learn from them. They'll keep doing the same mistakes over and over again. So this book gives you questions to ask to see if they're teachable. And the third trait in humble, hungry, smart is smart. And it's not talking about like intelligence, it's talking about emotional intelligence. It's talking about, are they self-aware, where they know what their idiosyncrasies are, what annoys, just little character traits. So can they read a room? And it has great questions in this book that gives you to ask candidates to find out, if they're emotionally smart, if they're self-aware. And again, you want somebody that doesn't just try to interview well. You want to find candidates that are comfortable in their own skin. And when you come across people that are just comfortable, that they're not trying to look like they're the best, you're gonna be able to have an employee who can learn, they can read the room, they know. Being emotionally smart is a powerful character trait that will save you a lot of grief. And you want someone that can be able to be self-aware enough to know that, hey, not only aren't they perfect, but they know the little things that annoy them. They know the little things that other people are annoyed about them, and they can be self-aware enough to make an adjustment. And they're not just like a bull in a china shop. You want somebody that is self-aware, somebody that's teachable, somebody that is humble, and somebody that has a hard work ethic. And those three traits, really, like I said, even if you don't go through the core values exercise, or you haven't figured out what your core values are, if you just start making hiring decisions based on those three traits, you're going to be in a much better position. So I encourage you to check it out. Check out the download that I made to go through that core values exercise, and I'll see you on the next one.